Zambia and Nigeria have been asked to join other African countries who have signed the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Now, following South Africa President Cyril Ramaphosa's request at the Afreximbank's 25th anniversary, the AU Commissioner for Trade and Industry, Albert Muchanga, made this request in an exclusive interview with CNBC Africa's Christy. Take a look.
It means a lot because we decided to take a decision to come up with our own institution to finance trade, and we're moving in that direction. We still have a lot of challenges. We have an annual shortfall of about 110 to 120 billion US dollars per year, short of trade finance. But over time, we can resolve that one. So with that, then we are really in a position where we can also undertake studies to understand what drives intra-African trade. Where are we going and how do we improve? And that is the basis of these annual reports on trade performance in Africa. And the landscape that has been outlined regarding the African Continental Free Trade Area is very, very informative. And I think for business people in Africa, what they've come to realize is that their new domestic market is no longer the national market. It's the market, the large market created under the Continental Free Trade Area, 1.2 billion people. So they must produce according to that scale.
And that's you giving us some of the points on the Africa Trade Report 2018. Congratulations on the launch of that. So I'll take it a step further by asking you to talk us through the keynotes in that report.
Well, the keynotes in that report, one is the new landscape that has been created by the African Continental Free Trade Area. I talked about that. The question of trade performance, the intra-African trade is growing. At some time, it was as low as 10%. Now it's somewhere between 15 to 18%, which is a very good development. And then it also indicates that some of the countries which are very active in intra-African trade have not yet signed on. Those specifically mentioned are Zambia and Nigeria. So these very active players in intra-African trade, the message to them is that they need to get on board. And when they do that, I think they'll perform better because they are major players in intra-African trade.
So from 44 countries initially signing the AFCTFA, we have now moved to 49 countries, with South Africa signing just at the last AU summit. Talk us through what this means now for the AFCTFA.
What this means is that we are really moving slowly to our desire to have all the 55 African countries become members of the African Continental Free Trade Area. We are remaining with the 6, and we are in discussion with quite a number of them, and including Nigeria. They've assured that they just need a little more time to continue their national level consultations. They will eventually be on board. So when all the 55 African countries are members of the African Continental Free Trade Area, you heard the message. It will really ensure that the question of African unity in economic terms is being implemented. And when now we speak with one voice and act in unison, it means that Africa can leverage her new power in negotiations with the rest of the world. So it's very good for Africa.
Speaking with one voice, acting in unison, like you said, lowering all trade barriers within Africa, across Africa, is the focus of the Continental Free Trade Agreement and area. Now, this could also, on the flip side, raise questions of security, like was raised earlier during the one-on-one panel session had earlier. Is the organization at this point worrying about those, or are these being factored into the agreement?
One thing you should know about security is that security challenges are normally perpetrated by criminal elements. And for criminal elements, whether there's a visa or there's no visa, if they wanted to establish a syndicate from one country to the next, they will do it. So this free movement is targeted at law-abiding Africans who wanted to move freely across borders. You'll be surprised. Some of the business people who have regular business across Africa, when they show you their passports, it's like a book because of so many visas required. Now we are going to say we don't need that. All you need is just one simple document to move across Africa. When you have that, it encourages them to invest much more, because they can move freely across the continent. And when they invest more across Africa, they are creating opportunities for jobs. And when they create opportunities for jobs, there's no need for young people to be going across the Sahara Desert to go into Europe. So it's very good for Africa in every respect.